Welcome back to Better Pet Parents, everybody, and thank you so much for being with us today. So, pet safety is something that we talk about pretty regularly here at Better Pet Parents for obvious reason. It's only the Better Pet Parents out there who are actively thinking about being the most proactive pet parent they can be. So, safety is something that we like to talk about pretty frequently here. If you missed it, we had a designated episode about being proactive about your pet's health and safety in our most recent series, The 10 Commandments of Better Pet Parents. So if you missed that, you can go back and catch up on that. And we also talked last week about keeping copies of your pet's medical records at home in the event of an emergency so that you could be as prepared as possible to give the treating veterinarians at an emergency clinic all the information that you can if your pet is ever dealing with an unexpected health situation. So I thought that it might be fun if we took this a step further in this week's discussion and talk more about being proactive about safety, because I don't think you can ever talk about that enough. But I would encourage each and every one of you to know what you would do in an emergency. We as people know where the local emergency room is, where the local urgent care clinics are, and what we would do if we had a situation come up. We're pretty familiar with in our community where those emergency options are, but we don't always know what we would do for our pets. So if this is something that you have not already thought about, I encourage you all to do the research about where your local pet emergency clinics are, where the specialty clinics are, where the urgent after hours clinics are, and asking your primary veterinarian if there's one clinic that they recommend over the other and why. And that way you know that if you ever have an emergency situation occur with your animal, you know where you're going, how to get there, and you know why you're going to that particular clinic. Another thing that I would encourage you to discuss with your primary veterinarian is which items might be useful to have in a pet first aid kit at the house. It never hurts to be as prepared as possible. So talking to your vet and saying, which items would be good for me to keep in a kit for my pet's specific case? Is there medications that should be in there? They might say that you might want to keep things like hydrogen peroxide in there to clean a wound, or bandages to help wrap a wound for the amount of time that you need to get to the emergency clinic. So temporarily covering that if something were to cut your pet, or they have bleeding going on. They might say that you want to keep an e-collar in that kit to keep your pet from chewing on a wound, or eye wash if there was something that ever got in your pet's eyes. They might say to keep some powder in there to stop bleeding on a toenail if your pet ever gets the toenail hung and you need to stop that bleeding. And another thing that you might want to have in that kit is the phone number for poison control, so that if you ever have a situation where you think your pet has ingested something toxic, that you have the phone number immediately there that you can call and get some immediate instruction until you can get that pet to the ER. So whatever you can do to think ahead of time about items that you can have available, it's always a good idea to have those conversations with your vet. Another thing that I thought might be useful to bring up to you guys in this discussion is local CPR classes. So I'm a professional groomer, and I know that in my community as a professional groomer, there's always options coming up throughout the year to take CPR classes so that we can become CPR certified and be able to tell our clientele that we've done that. So if that's something that you're interested in, it never hurts to ask your vet or your groomer if there's a local class coming up where you can go learn about how to do that, so that you would know how to react if your pet ever stopped breathing. So it might not be exclusive to the professionals. Some of those classes, they might just say, well, anybody who's willing to pay the class fee can come and attend. So, it never hurts to ask if that's something that you want to learn how to do. Another thing that I'd like to just mention in extension of last week's discussion about keeping those copies of medical records at your house is, if you ever travel with your pet, we talked about how helpful that can be if you ever end up at a clinic out of town, to be able to tell the treating doctors what you've been doing in your pet's life. That was the whole point of that discussion. But I'd like to take this a step further and just mention that if you do regularly travel with your pet, or you're planning on an upcoming vacation with your pet is going with you, make sure you know ahead of time where the local clinic is, the closest one to where you're going to be staying, because you can't imagine anything worse than being in an unfamiliar area and having an emergency arise with your pet where you don't know any of those veterinarians. So I encourage anybody who's planning a trip with their animals to research ahead of time before you travel, where those clinics are going to be during regular hours and after hours, so that if something happens, you already know where you're going. Being as prepared as possible never hurts. So I encourage each and every one of you to stay proactive in your pet's life and have those conversations with your veterinarian. They want to have those conversations with you. They wish more clients were having conversations like that. So I encourage everybody to do that. Let us know what's been going on in your pet's life. We'd love to hear about it, and let us know something special about your pet parenthood journey this week. We'd love to hear about it. Thank you so much for being here, and we'll see you again next week.